a couple of years. Just to give you an idea of the Creative Arts Program, who we are. This is a program that's organized for secondary and JC students who basically show aptitude and interest in creative writing. So it's a program that's jointly organized by the Ministry of Education as well as Yale and US College. Right, so I'm Selena, I'm from the Creative Arts Program, and I'll be hosting this session. At our showcase today, we have basically readers who were mentorship students from the Creative Arts Program, and they will be reading their works that were published in our mentorship publication, and the works that they'll be reading are along the lines of the theme of the festival, which is Legacies and Creation. We also have with us 4 students who were part of the Creative Writing Program. This is the sister program of the Creative Arts Program, basically for the primary level, where we have primary 5 pupils who take part in this program. And these 4 pupils were in the program last year when they were in primary 5. And they also wrote poetry for this program, and their works were published in the Creative Writing Program publication called Mementos. Okay, so we have in total 15 readers with us today, and they'll be taking turns to read their works as well as to share with us a bit more about the poem that they're reading and what inspired this poem. Okay, so without further ado, we'll move on with our first reader, who is Lim Yingzi. She's from Nanyang Girls High School. So Yingzi, over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Yingzi from Nanyang Girls High School. And today I'll be talking about my poem, which is called Naming. So to share a few words about it before I read the poem. So this poem is actually inspired by the origins of my own name. And it stems from the fact that I used to feel kind of awkward because when I was younger and impressionable, somehow everyone around me had an English name. And a lot of people seemed to mispronounce my name, which made me feel a bit strange, even though as a child I didn't really understand why. And my grandfather was the one who gave me my name. And this poem the theme is that all names have meanings and that mine is an expectation that I'm proud to live up to. So through this poem, I talk about how the experience of learning how to write my name as a child. And the characters of my name are kind of complicated and hard to write. So I was made to practice writing it a lot. And at first they were unfamiliar, but it slowly became familiar through practicing the strokes again and again. So this is quite an important memory of the time I spent with my grandfather as a child. So the more times I practiced, the more familiar I became with both how to write my name and with the meaning behind it, and how the expectations placed upon me would play a role in how I saw myself and as part of my identity. So in all, I'm quite proud to have such expectations always around me as part of my name so that I can remember who I'm supposed to be. Yes, okay. So without further ado, I will read my poem. Naming. Ink spilt over papers lined with age, nib dragged over dotted squares, arranged like soldiers across the battlefield of a 5-year-old, learning who she is and who she will be. Lines snaking like vines with shaky strokes, from the pen in a smooth hand, held by another wrinkled with wisdom. Old touch guides the young fingers tenderly, like a farmer tending to his rice plants, rows and rows and rows of them. A sacred site, a humble ritual of how a child pens her identity down again and again and again. Like how she will continue to shout it at the world when the world tightens its grip on her and never lets go. That is the power of a name bequeathed by love. She remembers this whenever she writes, pen in calloused hand, the identity bestowed upon her like a crown. She remembers the exact moment he taught her what he knew she would be. She remembers how a hand over her own penned page after page of assertion that this is who you wanted me to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Yingzi. Right, I think it's a really appropriate poem to start off this session, especially when we're talking about legacies and creation. Right, okay, so our next reader is Lara Tan. Lara is from RGS, and Lara will be telling us more about her poem, Gurney Drive in Penang. Lara?
All right, hi everyone. I'm Lara Tan and I'm a Sec 4 student from RGS. And my poem is titled Gurney Drive, Georgetown, Penang. So what my poem is about is essentially this very special place in my heart that I never fail to visit every time I go back to Penang, which I always consider my hometown. So although I was born in Singapore, my family is originally from Malaysia and I'm a Malaysian citizen. So our family has very deep roots in Penang, having settled there after coming from various parts of Malaysia. So I would consider Penang my second home, especially since we visit it quite often and we try to go there at least 4 to 5 times a year, since most of my extended family lives there as well. So in terms of my national identity, I've always felt that my heart rests in Penang because of its idyllic scenery and its very carefree way of life. And I also identify with Malaysian culture just as strongly as Singaporean culture, despite having lived in Singapore all my life. And the sights and sounds of Penang just never fail to comfort me every single time I go back. It feels like I'm returning home to somewhere where I truly can feel at ease, away from sort of the hustle and bustle of Singapore and modernity and changing times. So speaking of which, I would think that my poem deals with themes such as modernity and the inevitability of how time sort of causes things to change and how that results in a sense of displacement or loss and yearning for what used to exist in the past. And I felt that Gurney Drive was quite an appropriate subject for this poem because every time our family drives by, we'd always sort of express our consternation that, oh, it's so sad that it's become this way. So without giving anything away about my poem, I think suffice to say that this place has undergone quite a lot of substantial change, for better or for worse. And now I'll read my poem now. Gurney Drive, Georgetown, Penang. Pallid ramparts stretch along the shoreline, fleshless in the sun. Above it, air hangs, caught in the throat of a restless summer. The workers pile sun-dried sediments and industrial-grade sand into desert dunes, impermeable to the crashing waves. Pushing water back like a receding hairline, the ramparts a fortified resistance. Tractors, cranes, lorries chug along, suffocating in the sultriness, pushing the sampans, fishing boats, to the edge of the rocks. My parents' genes carry memories of the shore, cataracts of blinding light reflected off a tilted plane of ocean, when water used to reach the promenade. Turtles nesting at dusk, hawkers selling their wares, children hurling themselves along the parapets, and lovers sighing in the evening breeze. Here, my motherland's future is webbed with the fishermen's nets, disappearing tides, and the man-made thunder of machines. Today, cantankerous shophouses make way for glassy high-rise buildings, the former spirited in their entropy, alive in their decay. Fair-faced concrete replaces traditional 5-foot ways, circumscribed by shrubbery, well-manicured lawns. The development speeds ahead, leaving the remaining residents looking on sea glass-eyed at the disappearing beach. And still, the sea creeps in, swelling, ebbing, waning, waxing, holds on to the tenuous remains of a liquid hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. I can almost see Gurney Drive in my head as she's reading. Yeah, all right. So, and I think to a great extent, many of us can identify with this, whether it's some place we hold dear in Singapore itself, or even a place that we've come from or we've been to and we've seen the changes over the years, right? So our next reader is Yue On, Fu Yue On. He is from Henry Park Primary School. He's one of our primary school readers, and he's in primary 6 this year. So Yue On will be reading his poem entitled Through the Years. Yue On?
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yue On from Henry Park Primary School, and I would like to share with you my poem titled Through the Years. The main source of inspiration for my poem was my parents. They play an important role in my life, and I cannot imagine where I would be without them. Hence, when the creative writing program instructed us to write a poem, first thing that came to my mind were my parents. I wanted to do something different with this poem. As I have both a mother and a father, I split the poem into a mirror where both sides reflected on the same scenario with different reactions. However, the events occurring in the mirror were intertwined, with the ending being somewhat somber and gloomy. The poem is about my life, as seen through my parents' eyes, and how they responded uniquely based on their personality. It helped me to overcome the challenges of life, and all three of us have matured as a result. The changes in character that everyone experienced was astounding, and these were reflected throughout the poem. When you read my poem, I hope that you will think of how your parents have shaped you into who you are, and that you must appreciate them for tirelessly providing for our every need, and sometimes wants, since we were born. Without further ado, I will now read my poem. She laid eyes on me the moment I was born. She laid eyes on me when I came into this world. Her eyes brightened joyfully as I took my first steps. Her eyes stayed fixed on me as I ventured into the unknown. Her eyes widened in disbelief as I ran around undressed. Her eyes never leave me as I roam the world. Her eyes narrowed with anger as I punched my brother. His eyes breathed with fury as he slapped me hard. Her eyes closed briefly as I wrapped her with a pillow. His eyes glazed wistfully as he thought of his own past. Her eyes darkened with worry as he saw me sulking. His eyes told how he truly felt as I locked myself in my room. Her eyes glimmered with pride as I presented my partner. Eyes glowed with glee as he listened to me tell a joke. Her eyes will never change through all these many years. His eyes will never change, though his hair is turning white. They may disappear though, and then she will not be here. I thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Yue On. I think it's amazing how Yue On has made use of the poetic form, right, to show the parallels between his mother's and his father's love for him as well. So Yue On, keep writing, and encourage you to join the creative arts program when you're in Sec 2 or Sec 3, right? Okay, thank you, Yue On. Okay, next up we have Charlize Tan. Charlize is from Dunman High School, and she'll be talking about her poem 1080. Charlize?
Hi, so I'm Charlize from Dunman High, and I'm gonna be reading my poem 1080. So first I'll talk about the inspiration behind my piece, and it came from one of my visits to my grandparents' house. My family and I go to Malaysia for Chinese New Year, and because my family is from Malaysia, even though I'm Singaporean, and every year it strikes me how much things are changing, I guess. How my grandparents are aging. So my grandma was diagnosed with a kidney stone in 2015, and that sort of resulted in her and my grandfather moving back to their home in Malaysia. Afterwards, I felt this dissonance because I see them less and less, and it's become more apparent the toll aging takes, because they always been living with me, and they'd always been okay during my childhood, but now in recent years, the distance that has come with all of this has become more apparent, yeah, so it was these, little realizations that left an impression on me and made me write this piece. So I'll read my piece now. 1080. The terrace house with the creaky yellow gate has stood for half a century. 3 generations of time sliced in flashbacks, like light being chopped through the blades of a ceiling fan, diffusing the aroma of my grandparents' sandbach and Louis and prickly heat powder carried over the streets in duffel bags for 4-hour car rides, where they stayed for 13 years, raising 2 grandchildren, settling into a routine of cable TV and cooking for 6, returning 5 years ago. Kidney stone, cataract eyes, arthritis knees, the simplest migration, no proof of motion besides uncreased armchairs and the eroding musty scent in cupboards. The flat had to learn to house just 4, and the terrace house 2 again. In the terrace house with the creaky yellow gate, Dit Da Chow rings like a reminder of evening walks cancelled. Thank you.
Ms. Yoon, you're muted.
Thank you. All right, next we have Chloe. Chloe is from National Junior College, and she'll be talking about her poem, Numbness Towards the Abandonment Scene. Chloe?
Hi, everyone. Unlike everyone else's poems, I tend to steer towards a more introspective side. So I'm a big fan of Rimbaud, so there's quite a bit of absurdity and surreal stylistic writing in my poem. It's about what education is meant to be, what it means to me, because I feel like for a lot of my education, I'm spending time just justifying my love for the humanities, just justifying what I love about art and poetry and, the things that people conventionally don't put as much focus into in our education. Without ado, I shall start. Numbness towards the abandonment scene. You know as well as I do that I am deficient. Should I request guidance into luminous stupidity from the golden sheep or the token? Mr. X lifts weights on the Alps, vomiting glass pearls. His ears bleed flat coke, fizzled out and warm. Hot noodles on a cold day that I tapao home, only to find lizard tails steeped in ice. The bones of the late Mrs. Y are now the arch of a harp to which my hair is strummed in dissonance. In the mind of the moving, Rolling Stones experience the impossibility of stasis. Stasis calls for memories of thunder-stricken nights and stories about how I used to think. Storms were God's tantrums and rain was nothing more than angel tears. The present is deficient in all promises. Guardian angels patronize whorehouses, ripping sins off windows. My classroom ceiling started falling apart on Thursday, flaking off the old grime from 1965. I collected shards of the school in an envelope, sandwiched in a little black book. They'll go into my little collages next week. Bits of building stuck with glue on old images ripped off condemned books. We are not like the paint chips. We won't be annexed and retained, and other lies I tell myself. The assigned email address is spammed with letters from Don Quixote. Please don't open them, Mom. You know as well as I do that he leans on my windmills. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Thanks very much for your reflections. Right. We are moving to Tara. Tara Teo is from St. Hilda's Primary, and she was also from the creative writing program when she was in Primary 5 last year. Tara?
Hello everyone, I'm Tara. I'm from St. Hilda's Primary School, and unlike everyone who has read before me, I'm going to read my poem first and explain later so as not to reveal the plot of my poem. So my poem is titled Take a Moment. Take a moment, will you? Listen to the whispers of paper, sharing secrets with the wind. Smell of the rain, a breath of mint, cool on your neck, sending tingles down your spine. Feel the cotton wool, a baby bird, brushing your cheek as it nestles in your palm. Taste the zest of lemons, a magnet repelling, then pulling at you, or honey, gold to a beggar. Do you notice something's amiss? I am blind, but when I take a moment to be grateful, I can see. So this piece is about a person who describes the little things in life he experiences. In the poem, he describes 4 of the senses that he experiences, which are sound, smell, touch, and taste. By not describing the sense of sight, this tells the reader that he is blind. However, at the end of the poem, he realizes that when he takes a moment to enjoy the little things around him, from the smell of the rain to the rustle of paper, he can see. What this means is that the little things that he notices helps him to imagine what things might look like in real life. I first got the inspiration for this poem when I was stuck in a shelter, waiting for a heavy storm to pass. With nothing else to do but to wait for the rain to stop, I took in my surroundings and noticed things I normally would have missed. It dawned on me later that night that I had been too caught up in my busy schedule to enjoy the little things that life had in store for me. I want this poem to remind people that we need to stop for a moment and notice what's happening around us, instead of rushing around from one place to another like what most Singaporeans do. Now is a good time for us to slow down and take a moment every day to admire the little things. Instead of worrying about tomorrow, we should enjoy today and be prepared for whatever tomorrow brings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tara. I really like the last stanza of your poem, which is on screen now. I think it's something that is very nicely put and something that we can all afford to remember, especially during this time, right? Okay, moving on, we have Hani. Next, Hani is from Nanyang Girls High School, and she'll be reading her poem, Migrant. Hani?
Hi everyone, I'm Hani, and I would like to begin by talking about the background for some of the background behind writing this poem. So my poem is titled Migrant. Sometime last year, I got to learn more about the issues faced by the migrants in Singapore, and since then, I've felt very strongly about them, and I've wanted to sort of support the community in whatever way I could. And this year, I think COVID-19 especially played a huge part in showing us the bigger picture of the kind of conditions that migrant workers go through in order to be able to stay in our country. So I think the fact that there are still some attitudes in Singapore towards migrant workers that are still belittling and aggressive, the fact that these attitudes still exist, I find it kind of ridiculous. And I feel like they are all to some extent caused by a lack of understanding for the situations that migrant workers face, for them to have to come to work in a foreign country. So through this poem, I hope to call more attention to these issues and try to humanize migrant workers in a very simple way, which is something I feel like a lot of people forget to do. And lastly, before I begin reading my poem, I would like to thank my cat mentor Theo, whenever you watch this, for your guidance in helping me find meaning in writing poetry, and also for helping me carry out that meaning in my words. Yeah, thank you. So I'll now begin reading my poem titled Migrant. Your figure cuts the bleeding horizon, standing atop miles of scaffolding potential, steel and plastic held together by a single breath of air. If you fall, the harness around your body will let you, and then lock you in its crocodile embrace. Your face flashes wary in the glow of your neon vest. Hostility waits for you at bus stops you cannot afford to get off at. They harp on your smell, upturned noses foul as durian. How do you think this nation's bricks got their color? This land opens its arms to all, but embraces few. Careful, don't bleed onto the whitewash. blood on your skin is so much more invisible. You think of your wife, swallowed by some other metropolitan nightmare, bearing another idle mother's responsibility. You think of your son, the way his grandmother's heart breaks whenever he wails for something miles away, something dangling over miles and miles of thin foreign air. Old skin, old clothes, skin. Beneath your feet, the world growls, baring teeth, your own world of dust and metal on a foundation of fraudulence. You close your eyes and climb. For now, your white helmet supervisor yells with both his feet on the ground. But one day, you'll climb and climb and climb and never come down. Thank you.
Thank you, Hani. This poem was written last year, right? If I'm not wrong, or yeah, before the onset of COVID. So I think it's great that even this year, with the progress in terms of our awareness of the situation that migrant workers find themselves in, it's just testament to how creative writing, how its meaning to the readers and to society can evolve, and even just how permanent our works can be. Thank you, Hani. Next up, I'd like to introduce Mindy. Mindy Zheng is from Raffles Girls School, and she'll be talking about her poem, A Thousandth of a Second. Mindy?
Hi everyone, I'm Mindy. I'm a Sec 3 student in RGS this year. So I'd like to start off by sharing a bit about my poem. This poem is about the experiences of a war photographer who went to a country in war to take pictures, and he encountered a soldier who was about to shoot a child. So he had a moral dilemma in which he had to choose between saving the child or putting his life and his own career first. So he chose the latter, and he is plagued by that decision even further down the road. This poem was inspired by a short film called A Thousandth of a Second, same name. I watched it a few years ago, and even though a lot of time has passed since then, this short film has still had a strong impression on me. And it was also inspired by a poem by Carol Ann Duffy called War Photographer, which I studied in class earlier this year. These two formed the foundation of my poem and gave me something to look up to while I was writing it. I thought that since we don't know much about war photographers, it's a rather obscure and unknown kind of profession that a lot of people don't really know what they actually do and the things that they have to go through. So I thought that this topic would be a good challenge for me to write about, and it would also let me learn more about the world around me. And I feel that this poem fits the theme of creation and legacies, as a photographer's pictures are like moments frozen in time, and they're a special kind of creation that will never change, and it will leave a long-lasting legacy. Okay, I'll read my poem now, and I hope you enjoy it. A Thousandth of a Second. That year, he chased war on his winged steed of metal and fuel to an alien city far in the south, where the horseman ruled. He imprinted blood and pain onto the plastic of film. A girl fleeing with walls exploding around her, abruptly stopping in her tracks as the soldier loomed over her, a rabbit in a wolf's shadow, a barrel pushed against her head. Their eyes met. The girl's mouth moved, a soundless plea. But what good could a camera do against a gun? He let the cigarette smoke carry his apologies to heaven, wept the tears that the girl could not, and prayed to the tobacco flame to burn away his sin. And the winner is... He stands to the thunder of applause, blinking in the bright lightning flash cameras. The rain of praise falls upon his mask of a smile. The blinding spotlight burns away the guilt, chips away at his cracked conscience, into the elegant gold trophy cup he cannot reduce to ashes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. I like the somewhat meta-textual image that this poem evokes when you can see the photograph even amidst the poem. Okay. Thank you, Mindy. I would like to introduce next up Ko Xingyi. Xingyi is from Nanyang Girls High School, and she'll be reading her poem. Her poem is actually in Chinese, right? So just to interject at this point that we do have writers writing in Mandarin and in Malay and in Tamil as well at the Creative Arts program. So Xingyi will tell you more about her poem. Xingyi?
Hello everyone, I'm Xing Yi from Nanyang Girls High School. I shall start by reading my poem first. 颜色笔与画。第一阶段，甘草糖。甘草糖五颜六色，有甜的、酸的、辣的，嚼着都不会断。老师给我一根，不能和你分。最爱的甘草糖，吃着吃着，很快就吃完。第二阶段，火柴。希望是最后一根火柴，擦出金黄的火花，照亮朦胧雾里的唯一一条隧道。当终点微弱的光隐约可见，一缕寒风，黑暗里寻找穿红衣的人们。第三阶段，蜡烛，它牺牲自己，给渺小的我带来虽薄却充满力量的温暖。黄色的光一抖，曾经在眼前一闪而过。金黄闪闪奖牌自豪地捧着，放工后坐在沙发赖着，眼前的颜色都化为黑白。简单，被融化的蜡烛滴落在木桌上。倒计时，只有看到了那幅画，才承认颜色笔短暂的存在。颜色笔与画 is a poem about the inevitabilities of life. It traces the development of the common man throughout his life through 3 stages. Each stage is characterized by objects that resemble colored pencils, licorice, a matchstick, and a candle. In the first stage, it conveys how childhood is a once-in-a-lifetime experience that cannot be shared. In adolescence, hope and aspirations are like a matchstick's temporary glow, with it easily extinguished with a small breeze, much like how hopes may be dashed even after the slightest of setback. Finally, in the final stages of life where man has settled down, man plays the vital role of a candle, lighting the way for others and being sacrificial, much like how the candle melts as it gives off light. 只有蔡端安离世后才肯承认，甘草糖、火柴、蜡烛都是生活中的颜色笔，而他的生命却是一幅画。谢谢。Thank you.
Thank you, Xingyi, for taking us through the stages of life. I'd like to introduce next Caden To. Caden is from Rulang Primary. He's in Primary 6 this year, and he'll be sharing with us his underwater paradise. Caden?
Hello everyone, my name is Caden To and I'm from Rulang Primary School. I'll start by reading my poem first. The waves crash against the sandy beach, and the little pebble waits for his turn to leave. Just a little higher, he thinks to himself, as the waves rise taller and taller. Then, when the little pebble isn't looking, the waves grab him and keep on pulling. As the sand loosens, the pebble braces himself, and the waves drag him into the sea. Finally, I am free. The pebble is in luck, but he knows that it will not last. As the weight of the great sea pushes him down, he stares into the vast, empty blue space. The mighty waves push him further into the sea. And what an experience it is, drifting in total darkness, the icy water cooling his parched skin. Is this really freedom? He thinks to himself, as he finally sinks to the bottom, and overwhelmed by the dark, he shuts his eyes tightly. Then the sounds hit him, the soft swooshing of the water, the quiet flaps of fish fins, the ever so peaceful rustling of seaweed. Oh, what a spectacular concert it is! The pebble can wait no longer, and ever so carefully, he forces open his eyes once more. When the pebble finally reopens his eyes, he really sees underwater paradise, a distant new world of crustaceans and fish, and the little delicate weeds sprouting from the seafloor. Whoa, the pebble is at a loss for words, and he's stunned by how water can be such an amazing and thrilling element. As he listens to a never-ending concert, he manages to lift his spirits. He looks on the bright side and thinks this place isn't so bad. As he glances beyond the bluish, frothy horizon, rays of orange sunlight streaking through the water, majestic array of fishes gliding gracefully past him. All these treasures lay out before him, that tiny little pebble. Now I'll say some few words about my poem. This poem actually, I started this poem during one of the creative writing program workshops that I attended. The workshop facilitator, she put some objects on the chairs at the back of the room and asked us to write a poem about them. I remember seeing one small stone on the chair, and I was captivated by the stone because there was something unique about it that made it stand out from the different objects. The stone had a very irregular pattern, and it was adorned by 1,000 scratches. And that made me thinking that maybe this 1,000 scratches, it could have told 1,000 stories of adventures and misfortune. So that got me thinking about the different adventures that this pebble had. And so I just started writing on this pebble inside my notebook. And then I really didn't put much thought into this poem. But when I went to the second round during the writer's circle of the creative writing program, a lot of people from different schools gave me advice on how to make this poem better. And so I just took that advice, and then I just rewrote it and wrote it, and then I got this. From this poem, I would like people to know that sometimes in life, changes can be very beautiful, and we should always make some space and time for changes, as you never know what the things in life will bring you. Only if you try it out and see if you allow it to unfold, changes can actually be very beautiful. And especially during this time, Singaporeans have to, and the whole world actually, must have space and time to adapt to this so-called new normal. And I want people not to be afraid of changes, but embrace change. So thank you.
Thank you, Aiden. I think it's great that from that one pebble, you built this up to a poem with such vivid images and ideas. Thank you very much, Kaden. Right. Next to read, we have Basuda. Basuda is from Anglo-Chinese Junior College, and she'll be telling us about her poem, Deurbanise. Basuda?
Yep. Hello, everyone. I am Basuda from ACJC. Again, thank you to the Creative Arts Program and the organizers of this Poetry Showcase event for giving me this opportunity. The poem that I will be reciting is known as Deurbanise. The title may seem grammatically incorrect, but let's ignore that. This was the first poem that my mentor, Mr. Yong Shu Hong, who is basically amazing, he guided me along the way. He assigned me to write this as my first poem during the program. So the theme was about the landscape of Singapore, and the poem had to contain ideas that emerged in my mind and based on what I saw solely, and I had to string together inspirations that came to me. So when I started thinking about the landscape of Singapore, the first places that came to mind were like the Merlion or the gardens by the bay, etc. And there was nothing particularly wrong with these ideas, but I realized how detached I was to the environment because they didn't feel personal to me. So I realized that this feeling in itself was enough for me to base this poem upon. So in a very summarized form, the poem is basically about taking a step back from the busy urbanized environment in Singapore and looking at the actual real environment around us, understanding why we decided to progress in the first place, what the point was of becoming a powerful empire. Is this urbanization detrimental to us when it is claimed to be very beneficial? Or is indulging in this urbanization around us enough to compensate for us neglecting our natural environment? Just, food for thought. So Without further ado, let me recite to you my poem, Deurbanise. Night, smoke, the Big Bang Theory, human evolution restarts. Mechanic, inhuman, the grind of white bone, homogeneity thrives. Bleeding oil, rusted, clanking cogs, information imparts. Religion, race, interminable delays. Post-apocalypse arrives. Present, working, witnessing epitaphs, overworked and dystopic. Fingerprints found on abandoned handrails, reminiscent of prior invasions. Crawling to the universe, cold, beaten, ignorance radiates, turning myopic. Seeking forged tenebrosity as green turns black, resisting earth and its creations. Reality latches upon the claustrophobic sun. Darkness plagues its lambency. Oppression shines from the paucity of discipline, along with its crippling obscurity. Yet the beauty of beyond stands the test of humanity. Despite the desolation of faded dreams, etiolation from the lost luster, and the hollowed greenery, the earth rotates in an attempt to restore the perishment of authenticity, renewing creatural hominoids and revitalizing the original anthropologies. With the rebirth from the warmth of spring, darkened foliage from summer's kiss, the onset of fall, and the keen bite of winter, it is free therapy. Reboot, reset. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasudha. Thank you very much. That was a lovely read. Right, we would now have Ashley Go from Methodist Girls Primary. Right, Ashley was also one of our Primary 5 participants of the Creative Writing Program last year. And Ashley will be reading a poem, The Factory of Life. Ashley?
Hello, I'm Ashley. I'm from Methodist Girls School. I had to write this poem as a part of my creative writing program last year. And when I was told to write this poem, I suddenly thought about my school. My science teacher always sets her expectations as MCQ, you must get full marks. My Chinese teacher, you must focus during the lesson. Listen! My English teacher, you'll get full marks for listening comprehension as long as you have your pencil. And my mathematics teacher, fuck up. These expectations set for us by our teachers has always put a lot of pressure on students. As our education minister, Mr. Lawrence Wong, once said, there's a big difference between textbook learning and the real world. I believe that, yes, academics are important, but it does not have to be the most important thing in the world. And I think that schools are trying to make the effort to teach us more about our character and prepare us for the real world. I feel like what I'm talking about in my poem is a bit like the Legacies software, which is basically a software that is old-fashioned, but many people still use it now, even though it is old-fashioned. Teaching in this way with such great expectations for our academics is like this factory of life, creating students that focus so much on academics and can't really think outside of the classroom. Yes, it is old-fashioned, and many schools don't teach that way anymore, but there are still many students who think that way. I'll read my poem now. The Factory of Life. Good morning, teacher. Another day, another algorithm. Bits drone on in an immutable rhythm. The Factory of Life turns out perfect robots. Everything's coded, no need for own thoughts. These unthinking robots solve a math sum in minutes. They've all been well programmed to see things in digits. A fictional story takes no more than an hour for every last robot codes with word power. Learning a new language, just add a new chip. These robots aren't daunted. A new file they'll unzip. With demons installed, multitasking's a breeze. More homework, more tests? These robots won't freeze. Only one thing stumps them. These bots in a classroom. Perhaps it's a bug or a virus of doom. For these clever robots, with their circuits all pensive, can never emote or be quite creative. Never ask them for ideas. You get no reply. Never ask them for dreams. They'll simply stand by. Perhaps AI is just that. It's artificial, not real. And I may just be this robot. It's all quite surreal. The factory of life turns out perfect robots. Everything's coded. No need for own thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I like the way that you somehow managed to put in all these IT images in a way that somehow, even though the poem rhymes, it just seems to fit it all quite naturally and say what you want to say. I could see that when you were sharing the inspiration behind this poem, I could see the knowing looks of the secondary and JC students, I think, who are a bit further on in the factory of life. Okay, but don't worry, Ashley. I think if you maintain this positivity and also continue to write, I think you'll just be fine, right? Okay, we are moving on now to Tan Jiayan. Jiayan, all right, it's from Nanyang Girls High School, and Jiayan will be sharing her poem Cultural Orphan. Jiayan.
Hi, I'm Jiayan, and I'm going to start off by reading my poem. So like without any context. Cultural Orphan. She just thinks you're like some unrefined banana. Yellow on the outside, white on the inside. Kevin Kwan, Crazy Rich Asians. Before I learned gritty generic greetings in Chinese, I knew these things at the back of my palm. Target, Texas, Duke, Senate, Hollywood. Dance to the adrenaline rush of American colloquialisms. Cadent voice of Beyonce. Posters of Obama up on bedroom walls. Mama's kitchen wrapped in a transparent facade. English cookbooks she cannot read a word of, a camouflage she hides behind. Her accent bears the striking white dashes of a zebra, cowering in the outskirts of a forest at night. Downloads recipes for homemade cheese, though our family's lactose intolerant. Today, she dumps leftover dumplings down a bin, and I watch rice turn into cobwebs. Local Chinese restaurants always carry an aura not quite like home, and tongues that draw the map of culture only rot with time. Brittle pieces of the incomplete language fall on my conscience like a battered heirloom. On the phone with grandma, yet the silent static masks all meaning. Dialogues gone missing, filled with stutter, identity carelessly misplaced. So many diffident heads turned away from the Asian label. Alienation sorts away the insect of ancestry. So basically, the title of this poem, it's a phrase from like an article about the movie Crazy Rich Asians, and I think the article was titled something like Asian Americans are cultural orphans. So I wrote this poem when I was in Europe. So I think like being there made me see how different two cultures can be. And I think that for Asian Americans and also like immigrants as a whole, it's definitely really difficult because, you know, you grow up and you're surrounded by two different cultures at the same time. And through this poem, I wanted to show how they have difficulty feeling a proper sense of belonging. So I don't have like personal experience being a first generation American or Singaporean, but my late grandma used to live in China. And like whenever we would call her, maybe like daily or weekly, she spoke this dialect that I couldn't really understand and I couldn't really speak it properly. So that was kind of like partially the inspiration for the poem. And on a societal level, I think that even here in Singapore, there's some degree of westernization versus ancestry. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jiayan. I mean, I'm not a first generation American or Singaporean, but I think with age, you know, one increasingly feels the sense of dissonance as well, right? Thank you. So next up we have Vaish from Jurong Pioneer Junior College. Vaish will be reading her poem Severed Tongues. Vaish?
Hi, I'm Vaish. I'm from Jurong Pioneer Junior College. So actually this poem was inspired by a play that I watched that my mentor took us to, Cynthia. It was called Madeka. So thank you very much for that, Cynthia. It was a wonderful experience. I wrote about the emotions and ideas that I felt after watching the play, what struck with me the most, and that ended up being my own identity and relation to patriotism in Singapore, being a permanent resident, not a Singaporean citizen. So I tried to take up a more personal reaction to evolution and change, which everyone can say, yes, there is, but for me, I'm a little bit disconnected and dissonant with that. And I also wanted to touch on language in this, how we force some narratives and stories to die out in relation to evolution and change, but also how there's this blurring of language and identity in Singapore, and how we say things but don't end up actually meaning them. So yeah, so this is a poem about the severance of identity and self in relation to language and Singapore. I'll be reading it now. Okay. Severed tongues. Walking feels a little like tying cinder blocks to ankles. The clouds seem to punish, and the buildings in Tiong Bahru seem to turn to soot and smoke. Then it rains, and I think, did it always feel like this? To put on clothes, but still feel naked in the cold, shivering and trembling. Band-aids peel themselves off skin, slimy. The river meanders by, slowly carving stone. Do you know what bending nature to your cross hand looks like? Like a torrent of water over smoothened rock. I call the river a river because it's the only word that describes that thing, snake-like and shunned. There are still grooves on its walls. Do rivers drown in themselves? I heard the scream once. It struck my ears like a sonic boom. Maybe it was my neighbors arguing, or maybe it was the sound of metal and concrete at construction sites. Who puts up these signs saying work in progress, sorry for the inconvenience? The words your mouth makes don't feel like the ones that I say. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaish. Thank you very much. All right, and we're down to our last reader. Last but certainly not least, we have Ryan Lim, who is from ACSI, and Ryan will be reading his poem, Old Heroes. Ryan?
Well, chubby mama, cutthroat with a blunt knife, a kitchen utensil. She wants to feed you butter and turn you into a glutton. Hope you'll be hungry for more. Too fat to move, too happy to try. The next dish on the banquet. Invited you out to eat because you hadn't in a long time. He wants something from you. You hope it's attention because you have nothing to give and you didn't want him to pay. Plush toys, hand sewed by big sis, eviscerated and stuffed into garbage bags, murdered for being dusty. It's time to grow up. Your hero gave you a ruby necklace and you think you look good in it. He told you he picked it straight from the earth. You wanted to steal food and you thought it was cool. Your world isn't in black and white, it's in technicolor. You like the most extreme color, red, unless it's on Santa Claus. Factory toys upset you. You don't remember gifts having price tags. Your world is in allies and enemies, nothing in between. The video of your hero's execution, on rewind on a very outdated TV model. You hug a skull every night before you go to sleep. The Muramasa overheating in your hollow gut. Your emperor dangled a golden spoon in front of your infant face. You threw it away when you learned to eat with your hands. Urban enlightenment, penultimate competence, sleeping easy on the streets. The god of brawling and busking, willowy and mature. You used to enjoy feeling sick, drinking hot soup, and wriggling under the protection of your daimyos, pretending Freddy Krueger was in the closet. Now, you pretend you have something to hug. Roaming, ravenous Ronin, you blow your nose into a convenience store receipt. The world is yours for the taking. Guitar-wielding giants are tattered magazines. Now you live in a junkyard where coins can be melted and forged into crude swords, as long as you can make a fire. But if you get caught, you need something to defend yourself. Take this cursed blade, steal the crown, spit in the square. Rules are meant to be broken. Disrespect your elders, stick it to the man, bite the hand that feeds you, and you'll be free. You dance to a new wave song you heard before on the radio. You didn't know you were happy back then. This must be the place, because rock stars don't exist here and now. Well, I like rock and roll. I'm a teenager. I'm pretty stupid, and sometimes I just want to do stupid things, be rebellious, live my life, and all that kind of stuff. I have a little rock star inside of me. That's what I feel. It's pretty stupid, but it doesn't belong here, as in right here, right now in Singapore, 2020. All my heroes are rock and roll stars, you know, Little Richard, Patti Smith, Jim Morrison, and they're all really far away. And they also don't really belong here, that whole rock and roll spirit. I mean, I'm really grateful for all the things that I have, my privileges, my parents, my school, going to this program. But sometimes I just want to escape and go to a dreamland kind of thing. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ryan. I think you're just an old soul, but maybe you'll find that 10 years later or 20 years later, sometimes there's just a sense that who you are or where you're meant to be is not quite here, and sometimes that there's that elusive sense of searching for that right place, maybe. But thank you for encapsulating all that in this wonderful poem, right? Right, so we've come to the end of the readings. I think thank you so much for staying on right to the very end. If you're listening in, I just want to allude to something that some of the readers shared. Some of them talked about their mentors and what their mentors shared with them, or brought them to a play or things like that. Even for the creative writing program participants, I think Caden mentioned being in a writer's circle, and how his friends gave him suggestions and feedback to help him to shape the poem that to what it became. So I think both these programs, creative arts program and creative writing program, are very much premised on this sense of a writer's community. And we're very grateful also to the Poetry Festival Singapore for extending this community to us, right? And I really hope that when our students graduate from these respective programs, this community will still be there in whichever form, and we're so grateful that we have writers programs like these, like this festival as well, for our writers to always benefit from. Yep. So thank you very much for listening in, and for this opportunity for our readers to share their works with you. If there's any interest in the creative arts program, yeah, you can always check out this website. There's an email contact as well, if you have further questions, or for either program, actually, creative arts program or creative writing program. So thank you so much, and yes, that's about it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Alina Woon, and all of the participants who shared your poems with us this afternoon. I left a note on the chat board. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.